Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make Connecticut tick. Well, if there's one person who's the busiest person in Connecticut right now, involved in everything in those headlines you're reading every 3 hours, every 2 hours, the notifications on your phone, it's William Tong, Connecticut's Attorney General, the state official at the forefront of efforts to challenge this fusillade of executive orders from President Trump that are challenging the U.S. Constitution. And he's here with us this morning to help us just walk through a few of the main cases he's taking on with fellow attorneys general across the country at this moment of constitutional crisis. William Tong, thank you so much for making time to be on air with us this morning.
Paul, thank you. Been a while.
Yeah, when's the last time you slept?
Actually, I had a flight canceled this morning. I was supposed to go to D.C., so I got a little extra sleep this morning, which is why I'm in my home office. But I got to run to Boston tomorrow for the birthright citizenship proceeding in federal court in Boston. So it's nonstop right now, 24/7.
So birthright citizenship, executive orders about freezing the budget, transgender athletes, transgender surgery, immigration, money, sanctuary cities. We got a lot to talk about, very specifics. Before we get into the nitty gritty, what is feeling the same to you this time, William, from 4 years, I guess it was 4 years ago when Trump, no, I guess it was 8 years ago when Trump came in.
Isn't it hard to believe?
It's that we're back.
I'm beginning my 7th year as Attorney General.
Wow. I felt like you were just in here a couple weeks ago, right?
I know.
And I remember when you were running, it was a big deal when you ran in 2018. I remember about deportations and family separation.
Yeah.
What's feeling, Attorney General, what is feeling different for you this time or the same from Trump 1?
Well, what's old is new again. And I think what I'm most concerned about is that our country is in the same place that it was 7 years ago, and that we thought we could change the trajectory of where we're headed, through 4 years of President Biden and Vice President Harris, and that didn't happen. We're back to a place where we are led by a president and an administration that is capable of great cruelty, that doesn't much care about rules and guardrails. Look at the January 6th pardons, and don't care much about the rule of law and precedent. Look at what happened in the Dobbs decision and abortion rights. And I want to just put it, I want to make one small change in what you said at the outset, in that I'm challenging the president, and of course I am, but really the way I see it is I'm protecting Connecticut, and I'm protecting Connecticut families, and that's where I was when I started 7 years ago, and that's where I am again. What's different this time is that they are turbocharged, supercharged, they're flooding the zone. Whatever adjectives you want to use, they're much more aggressive.
And I think what it looks like from the outside for me, William Tong, is that Trump didn't expect to win in 2016. He didn't have a team coming in who understood the levers of government and how he can get what he wanted and how he couldn't. It seemed to me, whether you look at Stephen Miller, Project 2025, they came in this time raring to go with a whole set of plans. They've done legal research on how they're going to challenge some interpretations of the Constitution to change the way the executive authority works. And that's what makes me think about your role. So you're the Attorney General, you're the top civilian lawyer from the state. You don't do criminal cases, you do civilian cases.
Right.
And you're the lawyer for the government.
Yep.
And that's why I wondered in the inside if it looks like the way it does from the outside, William. Like last time you were busy with it, of course. These were important issues, including immigration. But this time, the challenges are really taking place. Like last time it was the pussy has the big mass rallies. And this time it seems like much more of the percentage of the work of resisting is in the courts. It's the government, state governments going to court. You along. Every day we're getting released to about something you and other attorneys generals are doing as a team to try to challenge matters of court. Is that different?
I don't know how different that is, because if you recall, before I became Attorney General, state attorneys general stood up against the Muslim ban, for example, or travel ban, stood up to protect the Affordable Care Act, and I was part of that too. That was George Jepsen and me, stood up against the border wall. And originally, he wanted to defund law enforcement and National Guard in order to fund his border wall. Talk about, what they're focused on. They're defunding law enforcement. They're defunding the police, and they're still doing that. And I think people need to see that and understand that that's the consequence of what they're doing. Yes, are they better prepared, and have they thought through or developed their legal strategy? I guess so, except I think it's not that they've come up with some brilliant legal strategy that somehow is going to defeat ours. It's that they're just willing to push the envelope, right? They're willing to say, we're going to challenge birthright citizenship, notwithstanding what the 14th Amendment says. The 14th Amendment could not be
and especially on issues like DEI, immigration, they have a Supreme Court that's so much more sympathetic to them and more federal judges than before.
I guess. But still, the reason why we were successful 80% of the time last time in court is because they're wrong. And by and large, courts, by the way, it's not like every federal judge, including every member of the Supreme Court, was appointed by Donald Trump. You have Reagan, Bush appointees who agree with us, right? And so I will say this to the people of our state: if this remains a legal and process fight, I like our chances. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now you get when you're filing these lawsuits with other attorneys general, I know that in California they set aside a $25 million fund from the general budget to fund efforts by their attorney general to challenge. Is anything like that going on in Connecticut, or should it?
Not yet. And I've spoken to the governor and the legislative leadership. We need more people. We need more horsepower. Connecticut is a leader among the states, as you know, because we've talked about it. Connecticut led the way on Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers. Connecticut has led the way on the opioid and addiction crisis because, I had resources and I dedicated lawyers and staff to that. We need more horsepower. We need more people. And we don't have them yet. Can
I ask you specifically, are you talking about the challenges to the Trump administration, and how many people do you need and how much money do you need?
Well, there's never going to be enough, but let me put it this way. California and New York have thousands of people in the Attorney General's office, and they've got a multiple of the number of people that I have be able to work on these challenges. And for me, it's I run the state's largest law firm, but that's no more than 220 lawyers.
And do you have a specific ask for the legislature that's starting now?
We need more people. We need more big brain lawyers. I'll just be very candid about that. We need big brain lawyers. Everybody in my office is really smart, but we need big brain constitutional knife fighters.
And again, no specific number you're asking. You just want them.
But not one.
We're talking to William Tong, who's the State Attorney General of Connecticut, which you probably know if you read any publication in the Western Hemisphere, because he's quoted every day along with our attorney generals about legal challenges to Trump administration initiatives. One of which I read about this morning, William, is we have a newly confirmed Attorney General Pam Bondi. And she signed a policy statement, not an executive order, a policy statement that threatens to withhold department funding to sanctuary cities that oppose immigration enforcement. Now, I was confused by that sentence, William, and I wanted to help you explain it to me. I thought that was a Office of Management budget issue and Transportation Department, bizarrely, that they're going to withhold money. I thought the issue with Bondi was she was going to direct her U.S. attorneys to prosecute mayors and governors who don't agree to cooperate with ICE on immigration raids. So what's going on here with this new memo?
I think they've threatened to do both. And I think, first of all, she may be in contempt of the temporary restraining order that I have already secured in federal court to stop federal funding freezes. And so she just announced this directive, and so we're analyzing. But, as far as I'm concerned, this is a broad court order that says you can't arbitrarily freeze federal funding that has been appropriated by Congress to the states. And so she may be in contempt of that order as we speak.
Well, that'll determine if she takes action. I'm sorry interrupting. In other words, are we talking about like money for cops? What kind of money does the Justice Department specifically?
Money for cops. And defunding the police. Donald Trump and Pam Bondi are defunding funding the police.
Now they haven't done it. With this memo, did she do it, or does she have to follow that up with a freeze?
That's not clear yet. Except I'll say this, okay? When the funding freeze happened last week. It's hard. All the days have blurred together.
It's 4 years ago, but yeah, it was only 7 days. Yeah.
They said, "Oh no, we rescind the memo," and "Oh no, we haven't done anything yet, except payment portals, federal funding portals online were closed. They were locked." So don't tell me you haven't done anything yet, because things are happening across the federal government. The other thing I want to say is that this is about bullying and harassment and intimidation to get, New Haven, the mayor, the board of alders, the police chief, me, the governor, to make us react, right? And to take action because she said something, and to bully and intimidate us. And I know I speak for the governor. I'm sure I speak for Mayor Elicker and Taisha Walker-Myers. By the way, nobody is going to bully or intimidate Taisha.
This is true. I can vouch for that.
So we're going to respond. But what they're trying to do is to defund the police.
So as a result of not wanting to react to words but actions, are you waiting to see what she's going to do following up this order before you take any legal action?
I don't know that we're waiting. We're analyzing.
And then
and I don't mean to be lawyerly about that, but
no, I get it. I get that.
We gotta take strong strategic action, and we're analyzing how to do that.
You're also the governor's lawyer, correct, and the legislature's lawyer. Because I know that you don't do criminal cases. If they were to arrest Lamont or Elicker as threatened, would you still be their lawyer? Like, are you giving legal advice about how to use the word sanctuary, how to cooperate or not cooperate with ICE?
So let me get to sanctuary in a second. But look, it's my job to protect the state of Connecticut. And so depending on what happens, we need to have a conversation about how we're going to handle it. But yeah, my job is to be there for the governor, for the legislature. I'm the state's chief legal officer. So I'm going to do everything I can to protect us and our state. And to the extent that I can help and protect New Haven and the mayor and public officials here, I'm going to do everything I can.
So what's the advice about cooperating with ICE on raids?
That's their job. That's their job. It's not a matter of advice or not advice. The federal government has primary and, frankly, sole authority for immigration law enforcement. They have no right to commandeer state and local resources to come and take our state budget and law enforcement and do their job for them. We pay enough tax dollars to Washington. Do your job.
So we have a trust act that says we don't do this. Other states have passed laws specifically said they will cooperate. I've heard you mention that because they use terms of art that aren't really terms of art. They had a funding freeze, Green New Deal. They said no money for the Green New Deal. There was never a Green New Deal passed. Maybe they mean the Inflation Reduction Act. Is there a legal term of art for sanctuary city? You've said the term is not useful for the state or the city to call itself a sanctuary city because that puts you in the crosshair of a directive that might not have legal standing with that term of art.
But let us say what we mean. Okay, as the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut, let me say clearly, it is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect and honor and protect immigrants and immigrant families because they're important to us. They're part of our community. It's my job. That's it. That's where it starts and that's where it ends. That's the policy. Now, to use words like sanctuary are not helpful. Why? Because they have no legal meaning. They're terms of art, maybe. They're just sort of casual words, frankly. They don't have any legal meaning, and they're inflammatory. And they suggest things that aren't true. Number one, they suggest that somehow we are defying law, not following law.
That's slippery slope legal word interference. So when we're reporters, we watch the police do their job. They would sometimes threaten to arrest us for interfering by watching them do the job. We always say we're not interfering, we're not getting in your way, but we're doing our job. It sounds to me pretty similar when you're saying we're doing our job and not their job.
We're doing our job, you do your job. Sanctuary suggests that we're somehow not complying with the law. Not true. Connecticut is in full compliance with law. It also suggests that we can protect everybody, and that's also not true. Okay, look, they have broad power and authority, okay? And my advice to people This is the real talk part of this conversation. If you do not have proper immigration status, do you have risk? Are you exposed? Yes. Okay, nothing I do can change that. That's a fact. If you've committed a crime, and a serious crime, are you at risk of being arrested, incarcerated, prosecuted, incarcerated, and deported? Yes.
William Tong,
and nothing about Connecticut policy is going to change that.
We're talking with Connecticut Attorney General William Tong at the forefront of Connecticut's legal efforts to respond to executive actions coming from the Trump White House. You have in the last 2 days, you've had two very high-profile cases involving transgender rights. One of them, there's an actual legal action. Well, you and 14 attorney generals said you're going to, quote, stand firm against an executive order that restricts federal funding for gender assignment surgery. Now, I want to ask you how that plays out. Is that about, again, whether when we get past the freeze issue, about whether they can hold back money for Medicaid, or is it to like Yale for they do research, hospitals?
So the answer is all of that. There are lawyers working on that issue right now, and I'm not going to give away our playbook until we're ready to announce it. As you can imagine, I'm not going to call the play publicly until I run it, but we're focused on it. It is not even on the list of priorities. It's front of mind, right? It's like it's right there in front. And so we're focused on it today. We've been focused on it for several days. And here's where I take off on this issue. I ask myself, and I ask people who are against trans rights and against the LGBTQ plus community and want to fight this culture war. I ask them, what would you do if your teenager, if your child was diagnosed with gender dysphoria? I'll tell you what I would do. I would fight for my kid every single day, and I would fight as hard as I could fight. That's what any parent would do. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight for kids. MAGA, to me, as you distill what's happening, you've talked about federal funding and funding portals and legal challenges. Let's just come down to like from 10,000 feet and come down to 5 feet, right? On the ground. This is a war on children. They're attacking kids. What is the point of attacking kids and families? Somebody's got to explain that to me. When you cut off special ed, when you cut off funding for disabilities, right? When you cut off law enforcement that keeps us safe, you're putting a target on families, New Haven families, New Haven children.
So I was just curious, and I agree. What matters is the why and how it matters. I am interested in how it's going to play out. So you're ready to sue based on the ruling that they can't pause the money. What I'm just wondering is there an action coming out of the executive order that would prompt a separate lawsuit, or do you have to wait to see whether they're actually going to hold back money for a hospital, for a clinic, for state Medicaid money? Like, how does that work?
Both.
Okay.
So, sorry to give you.
No, that's good. That's good. And is that the same
both.
Thing with the other thing that happened yesterday? The executive order is going to defund schools that allow transgender girls and women on girls and women's teams, which I'm guessing is probably so few that you have to probably drive for days to find somebody. I could be wrong. About that. But my question is, this is going to be a fight over Title IX and how it's used, correct? And how the law affects. Yeah. Do we wait to see if the education department run by Linda McMahon announces they're withholding money for Connecticut schools? How does this work? Just walk me through the next steps.
Again, it's an attack on kids.
No, I mean, like, how's it going to play out in terms of what you can fight back through your role as AG? What can you do?
Yeah, we're looking at all that right now. It is, it's everything from the existing temporary restraining order that we have, this injunction that they can't freeze funding arbitrarily that's been appropriated by Congress, all the way up to violations of our nation's non-discrimination laws, right? To, by the way, this guy who has taken over our nation's funding system in the Department of Treasury. Nobody elected Elon Musk. Yeah. He's not been confirmed by the Senate, and they're they're stopping funding too. So the answer to you, Paul, is all of it.
So it sounds like we're hearing there's the ongoing question about separation of powers, whether the presidency can order not spending money that Congress allotted. But I also heard you bringing up interpretations of constitutional law on the specifics. How does Title IX work out? Is genital mutilation a theory about that isn't accurate, a basis on which you could make a claim for harm? So that we're talking to William Tong, Attorney General. A few more questions I have for you. Birthright citizenship. That's a biggie for you. You and other attorneys general have a lawsuit challenging, correct? You're a co-plaintiff, actually, against the administration trying to end birthright citizenship based on the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. A federal judge yesterday, I think, did make indefinite the hold on that. So it's going to be argued out. And I would argue that Trump is not lost on this. Trump wants this fight. They're trying to bring a new theory about what it means. There's some wording. He wants to get rid of birthright citizenship. If you were born here but your parents weren't, he wants to say you're not a citizen. And you're saying it's so clear when it says that we get protection for people who are subject to jurisdiction in the U.S. So they have a minority argument. They have some people who understand the law who say that doesn't mean undocumented or non-permanent residents, the children of them. Mm-hmm. So is that basically what it's going to come down to? Because this is true in American history, sometimes a very minority position that re-examines what words in the Constitution mean can prevail if you get enough Supreme Court justices. Are we really in danger of that? I know you've got a very sympathetic judge at this part putting definite hold, saying the language is clear.
I don't think so.
And this is personal to you because you have birthright citizenship, correct?
You see this chair I'm sitting in? If the 14th Amendment doesn't mean what it says, that if you're born on American soil, you're a citizen, I'm not sitting here. I'm not having this conversation with you. Because I'm not a citizen and I'm not attorney general. It doesn't happen. My parents were not citizens. I do not derive my citizenship from them. My citizenship is birthright, by right of my birth in Hartford, Connecticut.
And is it retrospective what he's trying to do or no?
What's that? They've talked about it. They've talked about repealing birthright citizenship and citizenship for people who are naturalized. So I don't put it past them. So why does it matter? Like, couldn't I have just found another way? No. When my parents, when my mom gave birth to me, my parents knew at that moment that I would have all the privileges and immunities, right, of being an American citizen, all the rights. And that gave them the freedom to invest everything they could in me and my sisters. Right? Sign a lease, open a restaurant. God bless, they decided to pay for private school with the money they made in the restaurant. They did all of that because they knew that I would be good, right? Here in this country, that there was no uncertainty about it. Think about the kids now. If this were successful, what status do they have? If you're born to non-citizen parents, no status? Are you stateless? Are you undocumented? And then what do those families do, Paul? Do you sign a lease? Do you pay your rent? Do you show up to work? I mean, the ripple effect of all this, that's why I said at the outset, this group, this crowd, my Republican colleagues in this state, are showing themselves capable of great cruelty. And then and there's no limit to that.
Diversity, equity, and including DEI.
This is such garbage.
So what's interesting to me about that is the impact of the directives against federal funding for anything that they call DEI, which is a wide term. I think it means for affirmative action or racial preferences. Yeah. Already, companies like Target have ended programs for minority hiring for minority contractors. Yeah. Universities like Yale are actually quickly scrapping and re-examining programs they've had. And the people are worried it's going to affect research funding, cures for diseases, if your university is accused of wanting to try to include. So how do you work up for them as the Attorney General for Yale, for the medical research, for the corporations? What is your role in all this?
Well, my role is to stand up for people and to try to give these people, frankly, a spine, right? We're talking about not just diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but we're talking about programs and a society and a approach to bringing everybody into our community. We're talking about inclusion and inclusivity. So let me ask you, Paul, does that mean now we're only going to celebrate Christmas and not Hanukkah? Does that mean we're not going to recognize the high holy holidays, right? Does that mean that you should take off your kippah when you walk into a federal courthouse? Because we're not inclusive anymore. Everyone should just be white Christian nationalists. Like, if I could use real language on this program, I would. Screw you is the best I can muster right now. The idea that we are going to be less diverse, that demographically somehow we're going to go backwards, and that this country is going to be less diverse, we're going to suddenly stop hiring women and empowering women, the president of Yale is not going to be a woman, is nonsense. It's impossible.
So when you're working with other attorneys general, are they all Democrats? Are there any Republican attorneys general who have signed on to any of your challenges?
Not yet.
And that's a difference. In the old days, that was different. Old days meaning 10 years ago, right?
So as you know, in December, I was elected president-elect of the National Association of Attorneys General. I still think that's really important. I am going to be. I'm currently on deck, but I will be president in a year, less than a year, of the bipartisan organization, and I have very close relationships with many of my Republican colleagues. We do a lot of work together on robocalls, on consumer protection, on opioids, on social media, right, on antitrust. And the other day we were talking about a big case, and I said, who's our partners on this? Indiana and Texas. Oh, this was emissions cheating by a major car manufacturer. So we're the last corner. And by the way, a lot of these guys went to Yale, so that's another issue. We are still the last. I think we're the last corner of American public institutions where Democrats, Republicans still work together really well and seamlessly, and that is worth preserving and fighting for.
And what are we gearing up for now?
On these challenges to the federal government right now, I haven't seen a Republican yet.
And anything we don't know about yet that you're gearing up for on the fights with what's coming out of Washington?
Any other fights?
Like anything we don't know yet that's about to hit the radar?
Well, I think reproductive rights and reproductive freedom is squarely in the sights.
Mm-hmm. About in terms of like prosecuting doctors from another state and
all of that. Another EO, their little conservative dark magic laboratory is cooking up all of these things right now.
Well, keep at it, William Tong. Thank you so much for making a half hour for us and beat awake after all the work you're doing. And William Tong is the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut, and you'll be hearing a lot from him as we keep going. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Harry Jaros. We're going to take a little break now. We come back, we're going to do something different from the other day. The other day, after an interview like this, we just went wide. We said for half an hour, we're not going to think about all the craziness of the world and have music that makes us soar to other places. Today, we're going to dive into a ball of confusion and all the ticking explosions and landmines. So hold tight while the Afro-Semitic experience plays. I wish I knew how it feel to be free. We'll catch you back in 5 minutes for Tick, Tick,